So my apartment was broken into again on November 19th, December 2nd, December 13th, and December 24th. On January 4th, they broke into my apartment and erased one of my hard drives. I had 2 hard drives on my desktop configured in RAID 0 with 2 partitions. They erased one of them. So from that point on, whenever I left, I took one of my hard drives with me so that they couldn't erase them both. On January 6th, I filed an online report with the Denver police regarding the break-in on January 4th. I received a phone call from them later. They left a message saying that I could no longer make an online report since it was a break-in, and I had to call for an officer to come out to my apartment. And that was very interesting that they said that I had to do that at that point, because I could only imagine what they would do if they came out and how they would treat me. On January 7th, I was driving and doing some errands. I came out of the grocery store and the trunk of my car was open. Prior to this incident, there had been several other times when I came back to my car and the locks and the doors were open or the trunk was left ajar. And he started doing what's called bumping the locks, and he started doing it all the time. I mean, there were just dozens of incidents. I started documenting some of them. It happened again on January 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, February 1, 4, 8, 9, the 13th. Every time I went back to my car, he wanted to let me know that he had somebody follow me. He was leaving the door locks open or popping the trunk and leaving the trunk ajar. Regarding the incident on the 27th, I had parked across the street from a local library and entered it. When I was walking in, there was a suspicious young white male sitting on the bench in front of the library staring at me. He hadn't been sitting in there when I had actually pulled up to the library just a few minutes before. I saw another suspicious male watching me in the library. I wonder if he's watching me while this guy's doing something to my car. I came out of the library, went over to my car, and somebody had punched in my gas cap on my car, too. By January 20th, the 2 men from the Middle East had moved out of the apartment that was next to mine, but I still heard people in there at night. On January 18th, I'm not sure of the exact date, I met with my real estate agent who sold my home. I had known this man for 18 months and he knew about the stalking, but he didn't like talking to me about it. It made him too nervous and he changed the subject whenever I brought it up, so I stopped talking about it with him. At this meeting, however, he kept asking me questions about the stalking and kept the conversation going for over 30 minutes, completely unusual. And later I really felt uneasy about that, and I thought he was trying to pry me from information that either the police or Greenwald had pressured him to get information from me. And I like this guy, Grant. I know that he wouldn't do anything unless he was really pressured or felt threatened in some way, that he felt that he had to do it. So even if he did do that, I didn't hold anything against him. I would actually want him to do that if he felt that he was in danger in terms of doing so. After the meeting, we had some follow-up business to do. When I called him, he didn't pick up my calls and he didn't return my messages, which was pretty unusual for him. In November of 2008, I'm going back a couple of months. I want to link these 2 incidents where I talked with my realtor Grant and this interview that I had for a job. I had a job at Children's Hospital in Denver. The supervisor who had spoken with me really liked me. She thought I might be a little bit overqualified for the job, but she said she was going to set me up for a second interview. To make a long story short, she never called me back. When I called her back, she seemed very nervous, almost angry, said that I really wasn't appropriate for the job, but that she would call me again and at least set up the second interview, and I never heard from her again. And I really felt that, as with Grant, somebody had approached Drew or told her about me, and bless her heart. I mean, if I was interviewing with a social worker and somebody from the police called and said that I was involved with some nefarious people, and she was interviewing me to work with children, I wasn't going to even get into that kind of a situation, and I wouldn't even go there. So I don't blame her for that, or I don't blame Children's Hospital for that. My fears about the police contacting Grant and Drew were later confirmed, and I'll talk about this more. While I was hospitalized, the police had access to this document and had deleted certain entries, including the entries regarding this interview and my concerns about Grant. So they got a hold of my document, changed all the copies of my document, and when I saw it, they had deleted a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll talk later about what they deleted. They deleted all this stuff, and 2 of the things they deleted were my suspicions about Grant, which they confirmed by that, my suspicions that they had contacted Drew and were interfering with my ability to get a job. On February 6th, I moved to a different apartment in my same complex. It was like 2 floors below mine. I was going back and forth between the 2 apartments all day long. I had a duffel bag that I carried with me when I left the apartment to put all the articles I've been talking about that I put in there. It had a lot of my personal information in it that I didn't want Greenwald to have access to. I had left it in my old apartment when I went downstairs to my new apartment for a few minutes. When I got back to my old apartment, I saw that somebody, just in a few minutes, had gotten in and gone through it. They had even sat down with dirty clothes on my white leather couch and left stains on that when they had got up to do it. I finished moving into the apartment and cleaned the kitchen. I turned on the garbage disposal in the sink and it made a metallic sound and it started to smoke. I shut it off, looked into it, and somebody had put caulking in there and sabotaged it. As I mentioned before, after I got sick from eating the turkey, I started cleaning and disinfecting my kitchen whenever I came back from leaving the apartment. This gives you an idea of how sick Greenwald is. I left a big bottle, I got a big bottle of this 409 cleaner, and I separated it into 3 other little bottles I had 2 bathrooms and 1 for the kitchen. So, and just by coincidence, I had all of them together because I was unpacking, and each the 409 is a deep green, and each of the bottles that had the 409 in it were all a different color. Somebody had watered down all the bottles so that they wouldn't work in terms of bleaching. I swear to you, I'm looking at the original container, the large container, and the 3 other bottles, spray bottles, where I poured things into from that same original bottle, and they all were different shades of green. Since I could no longer make an online report, I finally, since I had physical evidence with them ruining my garbage disposal, I decided to call Officer Masis, one of Denver's finest, came out. It's these women. These women were even more disturbed than the guys. Officer Masis came out to my apartment. I gave her a brief history of what was going on in Greenwald. Well, she knew all of it before. I think I'm famous down at Denver Police District 3. And Greenwald, I gave her a history of Greenwald stalking me and the previous break-ins to my apartment. She listened but said nothing. She then refused to file a report. She said there was no proof of entry and no proof that someone had vandalized my property. She said the whole thing seemed suspicious to her, meaning my calling the police and my descriptions of what happened. I said, there's no evidence of anything being disturbed. What about the garbage disposal? She looked at me and said, you could have done that. And then said to me, are you taking any kind of medication, kind of insinuating that I might be crazy? These people were preparing a case that if I went too far with this,